Hey guys, welcome to the show. What do you think, Masks? Did you like the new Disney Plus adaptation of The Haunted Mask? You thought it sucked? Me too. Oh boy, we have a lot to go over in this review, but let's get the rigmarole out the way, guys, because we're going in. We're going in. Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you a review of the second episode of the new Disney Plus show that you can find on streaming right now. And the episode in question is called The Haunted Mask. Now, if you haven't watched my first review I did with BD Horror on the channel, please go watch that beforehand so you get my sense of what I think of this show so far. I'm going to be honest, it does not reflect my lifelong fandom of the show, the books, pretty much anything in the IP that I've come across and fell in love with. But I do like aspects to it here and there, and it's not a total wash as of yet. But I am on strike 2. I mentioned in that review I was on strike 1 with that first episode being as terrible as it was. And this episode hit me low. It went for the crotch shot, everyone. So I had to pull out my fists, pull out the fisticuffs, and go in on this review because I have a lot to unpack and a lot to say. If you want to know the general gist of what I think about this episode, I hate it pretty much passionately. I like certain aspects here and there, but if I'm getting down to the rigmarole, I think it spits on the legacy of the Haunted Mask. As a lifelong Haunted Mask fan, the Haunted Mask is my mascot. It is my favorite IP within the franchise. And they managed to make something I like less than wanted the Haunted Mask. So kudos to you, Sony and Disney. Kudos to you. That's all I have to say. And also shame on you. That being said, let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So, episode 1 establishes the core group of 5 characters, at least as we knew them in that episode. You have Isaiah, the star football player. You have Margot, who's like the nerdy it girl that never gets in any trouble. Allison, who's Isaiah's girlfriend and is kind of a mean girl at school. Lucas, who is kind of like the Johnny Knoxville of the group. He's just reckless and doesn't really care about his own well-being. And you have James, who is the goofy one. Let's just say that. And in this episode, we get introduced to a brand new character that was kind of in the background of the first episode, because off the bat, you get the sense that this episode is doing soft retcons of events, because we might see this girl here and there in the first episode in the background, but none of this stuff that we saw in the first episode actually happened on screen. So you got to put that aside to get into what the story's trying to tell you. But you start off with this girl waking up to an alarm, and she's typing away on social media, and she has a handle name calling her like your internet troll or something, and she's pretty much trolling people online, being mean to them. And I'm like, what kind of archetype is this for a Haunted Mask character? I mean, we've had Steve Boswell in the past where he was a bully, and I thought that was a fine shakeup. So I wanted to see where they're going to go with a girl bully. Because Luann from Wanted the Haunted Mask wasn't really like that. And we all know Carly Beth definitely wasn't like that. So I'm like, okay, let's see where they go with this Isabella character. That's her name, by the way. So she wakes up, she's typing away, just messing with people online. She goes down to her kitchen to eat some breakfast with her little brother. And her little brother seems to be, kind of concerned with his older sister. And I like their connection here. I do think they have some good chemistry. And they're bouncing off some ideas. And it's revealed early on that it's set on Halloween. So this is going to go back to the Halloween party from episode 1. So I was like, okay, well, how are they going to tie this Isabella girl into how she gets supposedly the Haunted Mask, because the episode is called The Haunted Mask, right? So she goes to school, and this girl is painfully invisible to everyone else in the school, even though she is pretty much the person that you can gather, that gathers the intel for sporting events. She is, I guess, important into the school function because she's like an announcer or writer or something. I didn't really catch on what it is. It doesn't really matter. But nobody pays attention to this poor girl. You see these other characters going through these events throughout the day of Halloween from the previous episode, and she's kind of there witnessing things. She has an altercation with a boy in the hallway that like messes with her, and you can tell that she's not respected at school, so maybe that's why she goes online and trolls people, because she doesn't really have a personal outlet to bounce this off of. And then later on in gym class, when Isaiah's working out, she overhears a Halloween party and decides that maybe this might be a good segue for her to, you know, branch out and, you know, go experience the Halloween party and feel like everyone else. And she ends up going to the Halloween party, and she's, you know, still being ignored, and she's wandering around. She's feeling uncomfortable. Everybody else has a costume. Her costume really isn't the greatest thing. She's wearing like a dress. She hears a voice coming from this basement that Isaiah had just gotten the evil camera from the previous episode. And she goes in there, she's listening to the voice, and she finds this mask. And this mask is like coaching her to put it on, and she puts it on, and then when she does, she kind of turns into like Jim Carrey's The Mask, where her persona is completely changed a little bit. And it's like that in the regular Haunted Mask books, but this, they put a lot of emphasis that this mask gives her confidence. She goes out onto the dance floor, she's strutting her thing, she starts dancing around, she's feeling like a normal teenager, she's having fun for a change. And then when she gets home, she realizes that finally she feels accepted in some way. And she tries to take off the mask, and she's struggling a little bit, but she manages to get it off, casts it aside, and then we see that the mask might be grinning, which is a totally different power to these masks. And I haven't even brought up the look of the mask, and I'll save that for the end of the video, but the mask looks like a $5 Walmart mask that you just put on that looks like a baby doll face. It is what it is, but it's kind of creepy, I guess. And there's also other subplot things going on in this episode. We learned at the ending of the last episode, mild spoiler in case you haven't seen it, Harold Biddle has supposedly taken over the teacher, Nathan Bratt. And we see a montage of, I guess, Harold Biddle in the flashback before the episode of, you know, his life and, you know, what he went through. So him possessing Nathan Bratt starts off kind of vague. You think that maybe it might have been a one-time only thing, and the teacher realizes he's running late for school, and he heads to the school, but he realizes he doesn't have complete control over his bodily functions, and he feels kind of off. So he goes into the bathroom to see what's going on with him, and he looks in the mirror and he sees Harold Biddle in his reflection, which automatically gives Harold Biddle the control again. And for the rest of the episode, I'm going to keep it kind of vague, because I think the Harold Biddle subplot does feed into the overall big picture. You get the sense that everything that Mr. Bratt does for the rest of the episode, I'll just leave it here, is actually Nathan Biddle doing this. So while that's going on, Isabella, she goes to school the next day because she has to go to this football game that's supposedly going to be riding for Isaiah's scholarship. And she has a drone in the air, and she's ready to, practice the recording. She has it flying up in the air. And we see this kid named Lucas from the first episode being Johnny Knoxville, and he jumps out from the top of something, grabs onto the drone, and crashes it down to the earth, which breaks it. And apparently the drone was about $3,000. And they get called to the guidance counselor's office, I guess, for mediation on the event, because Isabella was, of course, really upset with Lucas. And Lucas is like, well, it was just a prank. And she's like, well, it's $3,000. And the guidance counselor files into the back of his head and goes to Lucas's mom, who runs this inn at Port Lawrence in this town that the show takes place in, and notifies her that Lucas broke a $3,000 drone. You might want to speak with him. And you get some background on why Lucas is acting like Johnny Knoxville. It's because his dad is no longer in the picture, and he feels like he needs to act out and lash out. And the mom's kind of trying to forgive his ignorance because he's hurting, right? So it does subtly bring some emotional weight to Lucas's character, which I really did like. And once the guidance counselor leaves, and you get this sense that there's some romantic connection with Lucas's mom interacts with Nathan Bratt, who is now supposedly just Harold Biddle possessing his body. And it's kind of weird and creepy, this whole scene. But you get the sense that something is off with Nathan Bratt, and the mom's and the mom character feels like she knows him from somewhere, but she can't put her finger on it. And that might play a role near the later portion of the episode when she's talking with some parents. And that bleeds into episode 3, which is James's story with the cuckoo clock. And that's going to be for the next review. So I'll leave it off there and just keep the rest of this plot synopsis with Isabella, okay? So Isabella comes home. She's really upset. After speaking with the guidance counselor, she has this impulse because she brings the mask with her to school. And the mask is like whispering to her, and she gets all up in the guidance counselor's face and just tells him off. And she feels kind of bad and saddened about it. But when she's in her own room, she hears these voices coming from the mask saying, you know, let's go get Lucas. You know, you need to get some revenge, or whatever the case may be. So she decides to give in, and she heads to like this junkyard where Lucas and his buddies and cronies are hanging out. And she straight up comes out into the junkyard wielding like a weapon and trying to smack Lucas. And we then get to see, because this is the haunted mask, if you don't know from the books, there is a stipulation that if you put the mask on twice, the mask starts to take hold of your body. If you put it on a third time, you can never take it off. Well, let's just say, while in this junkyard or street alley of places, she's trying to beat up Lucas and Lucas's friends, I think it was Isaiah and James, or James and Allison. I forget the 2 other characters that come to his rescue. It doesn't really matter. But she transforms into a troll. The mask that looks like a baby face, just a blank old baby face, transforms into a troll because that was what she, I guess, was behaving like in the beginning of the story. So there's some theming going on with the mask. And I get that, and I like the concept. But the transformation scene in the mask itself looks terrible. This mask looks like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and the troll from Halloween Town High had a baby. It is not good. And this troll version of Isabella starts wreaking havoc, chases off the teens, and she ends up going back home, and she's in her house, and her little brother's there hearing a commotion. He's freaked out. This is actually probably the tensest scene in the whole episode, where he's looking at this intruder in his home destroying his kitchen. And he's like, well, I got to call Isabella to see what's going on. And he calls and sees the phone ringing in the back pocket. And he realizes that it is Isabella. So he calls out to her. And Isabella, possessed by the mask, chases after him. And they run into the backyard. And he ends up going into like this old barn shed area. And he's hiding in there. And this is actually a pretty well done scene. There's a jump scare here that legit got me. The haunted mask pretty much tries to come after the little brother, right? And the little brother, he's cornered, and the mask is about to do something potentially horrifying to him, and he breaks through to her as a symbol of love, like the books. And this convinces Isabella to get enough strength to take control over the mask that's trying to whisper things and pretty much mind control her. And she rips off the mask, and you get this sense that everything's over. And she can't help but thank her brother. She casts the mask aside, and later on, at the very end of the episode, her and her brother toss the mask into the water below at this nearby park pond or something, and they try to bid farewell. But we do see Harold Biddle possessing Nathan Bratt in the background, and there might be something that he plans to do with the mask that they've just now discarded. And that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it off with the episode, because there's so much story elements going on. There's a lot to discuss. But that's the rudimentary sense of what you're going to expect out of the haunted mask. I'm leaving out some key parts of the episode dealing with Biddle's character that you get to know, especially the ending, because the ending segues into the 3rd episode. And this is all one continuous story, so keep that in mind, right? So for the haunted mask episode, y'all, I was really pissed off watching this because there's creative liberties here that I really enjoyed. And I do think it was a fresh concept that I was looking for in a new haunted mask adaptation. But there's some really poor execution and, in my opinion, just crap piled on top. But I want to start off with the positives here. One thing I really enjoyed about this episode, I enjoyed Isabella and her brother's relationship, and that plays a huge weight near the climax of the story. And I dig that. I think that having Isabella's younger brother in the episode definitely added some more emotional weight for this Isabella character, who may or may not have been the most likable or fleshed out character in the history of Haunted Mask books. She's kind of right there with Luann, with pretty poor characterization. But you do get the sense that her and her brother are close because she doesn't have much friends in high school. She's made best friends with a brother that's probably 8 or 9 years younger than her, or maybe less than that, but that's what it looks like. So I did that. The concept of the mask in this episode, while I hate the look of it with a burning passion, I do like that the mask has the ability to whisper and invite people over to it. I think the communication element was kind of missing in the books and in the former episodes. So I dig this new addition to the Haunted Mask lore. But that being said, though, tied with that, I do like that the mask brings out the person within them. That was always alluded to in the shop owner in the books and in the episodes, where he tried to create these new faces, but it brought out some facet of the evil inside of him and contorted the face. And it became something that it wasn't. Now, in the episode version, of course, because I think they're trying to carry this mask over throughout courses of episodes, the mask doesn't take the permanent shape of it being a troll. Isabella does not permanently taint the mask, yet, I guess, but the mask reverts back to its former form, which I think is kind of cool. And I do think it's creepy that it's able to kind of grin and do some things. That was alluded to in the book as well. But they managed to do it even though the mask was like crap. So hats off to the writers on this one for putting a little more care into the Haunted Mask, at least in the concept, than they did with Say Cheese and Die. So, yeah, those are pretty strong positives. I do like the subplot with the guidance counselor and Lucas's mom, even though that's not really the main story here. I do like that. I do like that it kind of provides some more context on Lucas's character. And yeah, that's about it. Everything else I pretty much hate. I'm going to start off with the first negative, and that's Isabella. Isabella's not a terrible character. I kind of categorize her as like a Luann from one of the Haunted Mask. Not the greatest Haunted Mask protagonist. If I'm being honest, I don't know which one I prefer more. But I like Luann's relationship with her friend Devin in one of the Haunted Mask, even though I hate Devin's story. I think it's really out of place. Here, she has similar attributes that makes her comparable. But I would put her in that bottom, I guess now that we've had 4 Goosebumps protagonists that have had the mask on, or mask-centered stories. She would be like number 4 or 3. Not the greatest thing ever. She's not really characterized all that much. And if I'm being honest, she's not really that likable. So yeah, you don't really know much about this girl other than, she records football games and she has an ulterior life. She doesn't really have much friends and maybe she gets bullied. But she's also a bully herself. So that kind of counterbalances any likability there. I just feel so in between with her. Like I'm hoping that she gets better characterization, like solo characterization. And I'm kind of speaking ahead. I do think she improves in episode 3 for me. She does become more likable. Become more of a main player in all of this with the core 5 from the first episode. But yeah, not the greatest characterization going on. The soft retconning of events to tie it all together, I'm not a fan of this. And I don't, it happens in almost every episode that I've seen so far. So I can't really pinpoint this only happening in this episode, but it is something that detracts me from it heavily, I will say. And I guess we'll get down to the main things, right? The masks have spoken. They hate this episode. You want to know why? These masks from the original show, man. Whoever designed these masks, these are creepy. These are creepy masks, okay? These gave kids nightmares. Seeing what Steve was going through, my bad. Seeing what Carly Beth was going through. The shop owner, even from Haunted Mask 2's episode. If you read the books, these masks are terrifying, right? They might not look like it in this little raw form, but the makeup on the episodes, truly special. You know what they did to Haunted Mask here? They made a practical effect mask that they could have gotten from Walmart. This generic babyface mask. They put some little scars on it. And everything else about it was CGI'd in. I tell you, this mask, when I first heard that this was going to be the Haunted Mask, I was cringing eternally in the trailer. And the fact that it still is the Haunted Mask, it's in its raw form, still irks me. And going into it further, what this mask transforms into is some of the worst CGI effects I have ever seen personally. It made me internally cringe. And then seeing the mask. The mask. I get it. It ties thematically to the story. I get it. But it looks atrocious. I don't know. I think there might be a prosthetic there, but they do CGI enhance it a lot. And I'm not a fan of the look whatsoever. It took me out of it. Even though I can tell that the younger brother was feeling tension, he was feeling scared, I did not feel it. Because it looked horrendous. It looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings and the pink troll from Halloween Town High had a baby. No, it is not cute. It's not, I don't even say it's scary. Would I ever buy that mask to display with my other haunted masks? No. No. This thing had sideways protruding ears, a big bulbous nose, narrowed in eyes, a bald head with stringy long black hair protruding out of it. It looked weird. It doesn't look scary. It looks kind of laughably dumb, if I'm being honest. I can tell you now, so many fans are outraged over the look of the mask. We've been waiting for how many years for a solid Haunted Mask adaptation? We haven't seen one since the 90s Goosebumps show. We didn't even get to see it in the Goosebumps movies that much, other than in Haunted Halloween where they made the ogre mask. We've been dying for this, and they give us a troll with sideways ears, a bulbous nose, narrowed in eyes, and a bald head with long stringy black hair protruding out of some parts of it. It looks goofy. It's sacrilegious to the legacy of the original iconic Jim Jacover cover and this original mask that was the pilot episode of the original show. It's a disgrace. It really is. It's a shame, really. So that's the biggest one I have. And these problems are kind of inherent throughout the show. There is some mild cringe going on, especially with Lucas's character. He's poised up to be the bully that Isabella needs revenge on in this episode because she broke the $3,000 drone of hers. Yeah, the motives aren't really that cool. So yeah, it's kind of lame here and there. There's some cringe dialogue early on, especially with Isabella. Oh boy, talking with her younger brother at the kitchen table. I mean, there's some mild cringe. And I'm not going to lie, the whole texting effect, I think it's a cool effect, right? But they introduced this off in the episode where you can clearly tell that she's being the internet troll. And I don't think any of this gets answered in the episode of why people don't like her, other than some other side characters in the story kind of mentioning, oh yeah, Isabella, she might be a little mean here and there. As a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, that might be in future episodes. But the troll thing is that whole setup in the very beginning of the episode where she's talking on the internet as your neighborhood troll, whatever it's called, is literally there just so the troll mask can exist. Which I guess makes sense thematically, but I wish there was more to that. I wish we got to see why people don't like Isabella more. She seems so outcastish from the rest of the cast. You don't really get a sense of why. I mean, you get a sense that she has a parent or parents that are friends with the parents of the core group of 5, and you feel that kind of forced in there, but she might have a relationship with James. She might have a mild crush going on with Isaiah. All this is just kind of implications with her character, right? You don't really feel like you get to know her other than the superficial things the episode throws at you that make you don't like her. So that is a negative. Going back to Isabella's character, right? It all ties together. So it's kind of like a dual thing with Isabella for me. With that being said, though, is the Haunted Mask absolutely terrible? No. I don't think this episode is terrible, like Seiji's and Die, but I also don't think it's good. I don't think this is a good episode whatsoever. I kind of go back and forth with a high D minus, or I guess a low D minus and a high, or no, a high D minus and a low D. Okay, I was getting confused there. Because there's some things I really do enjoy about this episode, if I'm being honest, but the lengths it went to just outright go against fan service really irritate me. I don't know how they thought going with that mask look was a good idea. They could have come up with anything else. Anything else. Maybe more traditional Halloween mask flair going on with the mask. Anything to make it look scarier. But they didn't do it. They didn't do it. They came up with a goofy look. And that just sinks it lower to me into the bad. It's a bad episode. I think it's easily the worst of the Haunted Mask stories, in my opinion. But it's still not, like I said, not too awful. So from a 0 to 5 star basis, I'd probably give this episode, with all the problems I have, they might not be the biggest thing if it was maybe a book, but the visual representation just adds that element that sinks it down here. I'd probably give it like a 2.8 out of 5. A 2.8 out of 5. It's a D minus, not quite an F, but it is a step up from the first episode. You do feel more of a tighter plotting going on. You do feel like you get more character progression, more time with the titular villain of the episode, and I feel like the pacing is a little bit better as well. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Haunted Mask Disney Plus episode. Let me know down in the comments section. Did you love this? Did you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.